Antarctica, the coldest, most forbidding continent on Earth. Since early this century, humans have attempted to explore and exploit this vast frozen wilderness. And with them all this time have been the Huskies. But now, by international decree, Zipper and the other Huskies from Australia's Mawson Station are being deported. For the people in Antarctica who have come to love and rely on these rugged working dogs, it's a very sad moment.
I'll tell you where the most emotional was just actually jumping in the helicopter with the dog and just sort of cuddling it and patting it and saying, look, everything's okay, mate, it's calm, you're just coming for a helicopter ride now, and, you know, just very, very emotional time. Yeah.
This is the story of the last days in Antarctica of the Mawson Huskies and their uncertain future. Their deportation marks the passing of a remarkable partnership between working dogs and expeditioners in the far south. It's the end of an era. The ancestors of these dogs came to Antarctica when the first Australian base was established. Hardbottle and the other 29 dogs came from Greenland and Labrador in the early 1950s. From the newly established Mawson Station, they helped to explore a vast area of Antarctica. For the next 40 years, their descendants lived on these same dog lines, chained up through the long, dark winters. Temperatures regularly drop below minus 40 degrees, with winds sometimes over 100 knots. The winter before their Huskies were to leave forever, knowing that it was their last chance, Dave Pottage and Al Rook pushed for one last dog sled expedition. Zipper and the other Huskies have become pawns in the negotiation of the Madrid Protocol, an international agreement under which all introduced species, except man, must leave. Under these new regulations, their handlers had been directed to stop them breeding. However, a happy accident during winter saw Coco become the mother of 3 pups, Frosty, Cobber, and Misty, the last to be born in Antarctica. It was thought that Bundy and the other Mawson Huskies would have to be killed. There was a public outcry. The Australian government began to search for a new home where they could be kept together as working teams. Their final expedition is an historic occasion, one of the last dog sled journeys in Antarctica. It will take them over hundreds of kilometers of treacherous sea ice to inspect penguin rookeries along the coastline.
Knots in the stomach, butterflies. Am I going to be able to run that far? Are the dogs going to cope? Are they ready? Are the sleds prepared correctly? Have we got everything? Yeah, there's a little bit of fear. Well, quite a bit of fear actually, because it's a long way from base and with no outside help available, and that's a bit scary.
Zipper, the lead dog, looks first at Bundy, his mother, and then back around to Bear, the station's king dog. Zipper sees the hand signal of his dogman and turns to carry out his orders. Bear, the heaviest husky of the team, weighing in at nearly 50 kilograms, casts an approving eye over the pack. as the whole team tastes the freedom of finally being off the chain again. This expedition will be their last contribution as working dogs in Antarctica. On this last journey, the two teams of 9 dogs and 4 men hope to reach the penguin rookery at Clower Point, a round trip of 600 kilometres. Antarctica is a huge ice-covered landmass. In winter, the surface of the sea around it freezes over. In spring, although the sea ice has started to melt, the teams can travel with caution along the coast to visit the emperor penguin rookeries. They camp on rocky islands in case the ice should suddenly break out.
Come on, Husky, get in there.
With the inevitable blizzards, their journey could take a month or more.
There. Good girl. They just love to work and they just get in a steady stride, and you can see them just thoroughly enjoy it. All the tails are up and they look around at you, tongues hanging out and almost a smile on their face. And they just run like that for 12 hours a day. Obviously you've got to stop them every hour or so, give them a nice drink of snow and let them roll around in the snow and just relax and have a lovely time, and then ready boys, off again, and off they go, and bang, bang, and they just run for miles and miles. And usually it's quite easy to do 45 or 50 kilometres a day, no problems.
Total freedom, absolutely total freedom. Not a care in the world except running and running and running and just seeing the most magnificent scenery on foot.
No, get in there.
The bonding with the dogs, it happens quickly and almost unnoticeably, but after a few days you really get to know what the dogs are up to, how they're running, which personality is going to cause trouble, and yeah, you just slot in with them.
At first, the weather is unexpectedly cold. In the wind, the temperature stays below minus 40 degrees the entire day. The tents are a welcome haven for the dogmen.
Journal entry, Friday the 18th. This is the furthest west I've been, and what magnificent country. Islands and icebergs surround us as the track becomes rougher. No problems with the dogs, they are running strongly.
The faith Al and Dave have in their sledge dogs is a world apart from how the first British expedition viewed such means of transport. Captain Scott's expedition failed to see the advantages of huskies as working dogs. Being English, they treated them more like pets.
Osman is here asking for his dinner. And Chris was the handsomest member of the pack.
He favoured the use of Manchurian ponies over huskies in his attempt to be the first to the South Pole.
Captain Scott always kept a watchful eye on the transport animals, and he often had a friendly word for the ponies.
It was a bad mistake, as the strongest pony only made it a quarter of the total distance. Scott and his 4 companions were forced to begin the brutal and punishing task of man-hauling for 1,500 kilometres. They lost the race and died of exhaustion and hunger while trying to return. On the other hand, Roald Amundsen was successful because he knew how to get the most from his Greenland huskies.
Careful preparations and the endurance of our dogs turned our trip into a picnic.
Today, Amundsen's tactics would be considered ruthless. He started his expedition with 52 dogs, but only 11 of them returned. His strategy was to kill them for food.
We carried out the work of slaughtering the superfluous dogs. We found that dog cutlets made a delicious dinner. These were not fried, as we had neither frying pan nor butter. We found it quicker to boil them.
Amundsen insisted on strict control of his husky teams, a tradition which continues with Al and Dave. Without human intervention, the pack nature of the husky would lead to a clear-cut hierarchy. One king dog would call the tune. Arnie, the tough white husky, and Bear, the biggest of them all, are both older dogs competing with each other for the throne.
And this is why Arnie looks like he's come out of the Second World War with a big scar on his nose and another one under his eye. You know, he's battle-worn, like Arnie. Well, he's sort of stood his territory, and he's sort of one of the top dogs. Suddenly, just Arnie and Bear sort of just got into it, and the next minute, the whole 9 dogs are all into it. I think, oh, God, someone's going to get killed here for sure. Get out of there! Then we found out the bear was on the bottom and he was copping it all.
Bear squeals with pain, which incites the other dogs to turn on him, even though he is one of the king dogs.
Get it out, Rocket! Get out of there!
Fighting is in the nature of the breed, but the dog handlers must stop them from getting out of hand. For over 3,000 years, the Inuit people of the Arctic bred a hardy working dog that has been essential to their survival. The Mawson Husky bloodline comes from the dogs bred by these people in Greenland and Labrador. There is some controversy about whether they crossbred their dogs with wolves. In fact, they didn't. The Husky is a separate breed of dog that does have elements of wild pack behavior and yet will not attack humans. The Inuit dog was traditionally fed seal meat and had to fend for itself for part of the year, and so became a good hunter, a trait that invariably causes problems for the dog handlers in the Antarctic.
Well, the seals have come out fairly early. They come out in early September, and they start pupping about early October, so there are quite a few seals, and we've got to, of course, be careful. We make every effort to, you know, keep the dogs well away from the wildlife.
In spring, the seals haul out through tide cracks to pup. They must wait on the ice till the pups are old enough to swim.
I mean, they don't know the right and wrong of not attacking wildlife, so we've got to sort of instill into them that that's not what we like to see. And the older dogs tend to, you know, with a solid speaking to, you know, they respond very well to you. The younger pups are still lapping around and, you know, Lolo, get in there for crying out loud, you know, and he won't listen to the word. All he can see is a penguin in the distance and he just wants to go, and that's his dinner for the night. And well, it takes a while to control them and tell them, well, look, you know, that's not the done thing down here, mate.
Arnie, sit down. Arnie, sit.
They're quite happy on the trail. They'll just look at each other and they'll often give each other a little lick to say, oh, well, we're doing fairly well here. And the dogs have just got some character about them. I mean, you talk to them and they look at you with their tongues hanging out and say, look, have I done a good job? You know, has it been successful? I'd like to get up and start running again very shortly, and they start getting restless after about 5 minutes.
Now sit. Sit.
After several years of running with the Mawson dogs, Al and Dave know how to get the most from their teams.
When the bitches are coming on heat, the boys obviously get very excited, so it's great if the bitch is a lead dog, but if she's not a lead dog, usually you put her in the lead anyway, because all the dogs will be you know, following her, and that way you can make good distance.
After 14 days on the trail, the teams finally reach Clower Point, near the furthest penguin rookery. It's been a tradition for the Mawson Huskies to make this 300-kilometre run in spring. The teams are among the last 50 Huskies on the entire continent, and their journey marks the end of a 100-year partnership in Antarctica.
The overall philosophy of arriving in camp is to settle your dogs down and then go and put your night span trace out for your 9 dogs. And then get your dogs on as quickly as possible onto that span. That way that the dogs know that the end of the day has come. Thank you very much for their run today. But that's by taking their harnesses off, giving them a pat, and then the dogs are settled.
After every day's run, Dave and Al check the dogs. They're still worried about Bear's ear because an infection could prove fatal. The staple diet of the dogs on the trail is the pemmican block. This traditional sled dog food is a highly compressed mixture of meat, vegetables and vitamins.
Friday, 2nd of October at Clower Point. In the evening, the weather starts to close in. Maybe we're in for a blow.
In this inhospitable place, emergency help is at least a week away, providing they can get through on the radio.
Can you take a sitrep? Can you take a sitrep? Over.
Sorry, Al, not copying your transmission there.
Saturday, 3rd October at Clower Point. We are blizzed in. Visibility drops to 50 metres and there is no hope of going anywhere.
Al and Dave and their dogs are at the mercy of a full Antarctic blizzard. Trapped by the elements, they're in a similar position to many who have come before. On Ernest Shackleton's ill-fated attempt to cross the Antarctic continent in 1914, his ship became trapped in the ice. The men and the 70 Huskies that were to have pulled them to glory waited helplessly for the ice to break up and set them free.
How dreary the frozen captivity of our life would have been without the dogs.
After nearly a year, their ship finally broke up. The dogs were crucial in dragging supplies across broken ice towards the open sea. Then they were finally sacrificed to provide food for the survival of the party.
Around 1600, I venture out to check the tents and feed the dogs. All is well with the furballs. No drift build up around them. Not very pleasant outside.
Tomato, yeah, tomato. That'd be great, mate. Oh, yeah. It's most important to check the dogs because in a matter of a couple of hours you can actually get 2 and 3 feet of snow. And I mean, if a dog's buried by the chain, he can actually be suffocated.
Sunday, the 4th of October. We are still blizzed in. Dogs are okay. There's only a little bit of chain buried and the whiteout conditions prevail, so there's no hope of travelling.
Good boy, Plato.
On Tuesday the 6th, we eventually got out.
After 5 nights pinned down in the tents, the teams are finally able to move again. Now the main purpose of the expedition can be achieved. There are only 30 emperor penguin rookeries in the world, and checking on them is vital to the preservation of this unique species. Al and Dave count the chicks and record the adults' direction of movement to find out where they're feeding. Emperors, who breed in winter, differ from all other penguins. The egg is actually incubated by the males. Then in the spring, the chicks are nurtured by both parents until feathers replace their fluffy grey down. By midsummer, the chicks will no longer be dependent on the adults. The teams enter Mawson Harbour for the last time, having covered 630 kilometres. The Cloa expedition has taken 33 days to complete. For 8 of these, they were pinned down by blizzards.
Coming into Mawson was just fantastic. Yeah, seeing the lights and the buildings and the people, all the smells and Mal's cooking, fresh food, more beer.
Watch your property, you might get mowed down, mate.
Yeah, a really good finish to a fantastic trip.
Sense of adventure and the challenge and learning new skills and this sort of thing. There is that, but I mean the dogs have made it so good to react and be with something that's nature and free and easy and beautiful. Oh, mate, absolutely. I mean, you go over there, they love you to death. They lick you to death.
After Zipper, Arnie and their teams leave, travel to the distant penguin rookeries will have to be done by vehicle. For Al and Dave, a diesel-powered Hagland is a less appealing alternative. Safety is also a consideration.
Undoubtedly, dog sledding over sea ice is the safest form of travel because they'll just run along and suddenly balk and you'll know, hello, there's some danger ahead. Whereas Haglands, you can quite easily come to a tide crack that has been covered over and it could be 3 to 4 foot wide and bang, the Hagland can go in.
The Huskies were kept at Mawson Station after they were removed from other bases because there were several accidents like this. Luckily, there have been no injuries when the vehicles have broken through the ice. The Aurora Australis steams south on its mission to resupply the base and remove the Huskies. A new home has been proposed for them in America. There are last-minute efforts in Australia to try to keep the dogs in Antarctica.
Our remaining 28 dogs may soon be moving to new homes in America, a plan that upsets veterans of icebound exploration.
These dogs would die for you. If they prove to be unsatisfactory to the people in America, what for them then? They may well do away with them. Then they've killed off, actively killed off, our cultural and our living link with Australia's Antarctic past.
Frosty, oh, there you are, mister.
Dog sled operators in Minnesota were thought to offer the best home for Coco, her 3 pups, and the other Huskies.
Probably the most qualified person to drive this buggy, actually. Oh, that'd be a good photo.
There is also disagreement at the station about whether the Australian government should be removing the dogs at all. Some expeditioners send faxes from Antarctica to the dog outfitters in Minnesota, imploring them to change their minds about taking the dogs.
Yeah, well, I think we all lament the end of an adventure tradition in Antarctica, but on the other hand, the end of an era also brings the beginning of another era, a very important one, and that is that the removal of these dogs from Antarctica also suggests that the concerns about the absolute pure integrity of that continent are being taken very seriously. The fact that the governments would go to the extreme moves of removing these dogs from the continent suggests that they are willing to make a very serious commitment. I'm very excited about that. That's a very healthy sign.
All avenues of appeal by those opposed to the dog's departure come to nothing. Al and Dave are chosen to run the dogs to meet the ship at the ice edge. They will then accompany them all the way to America.
Well, I've never been to Minnesota, but from what I've heard, what I've read, and what I've been told, and the contact I've had with the people running the operations in Minnesota, I think they'll go very well. I think they're going to get a lot more work than they get here, and I think they're going to be a lot happier because they're not going to be living in such harsh conditions. It is extremely harsh, and people just aren't aware how harsh it is. They park up into a blizz, 50, 60 knots quite often. They may sit on the dog line for nearly a month. They spend more time on the chain than off. It's a sad fact of life.
Just before the ship arrives to remove the dogs, the worst blizzard of the year strikes. Kennels had never been provided at Mawson because the cost of keeping them free of snowdrifts was considered to be too high. Some also believed that shelters would make the dogs too soft. Under such conditions, Bundy and Arnie would rarely live longer than 7 years. The day has come when the Huskies must finally go. Their run to the ship over 70 kilometers across sea ice will be very hard because of the fresh snow that fell during the blizzard.
It's a very sad day. In fact, I think I'd go so far as to say it's a tragic day. It's the end of an era here at Mawson.
How do you feel and how the dog's actually going?
Sad day, mate. Very sad.
Sit. I've got to admit, I've been sort of saying goodbye to a few of them, and they're great guys. I've been out running with them, and you know, I became part of their team, I suppose, and I'm just going to miss them.
Okay, sit, Merlin. Sit. Sit, boy.
It was just emotional leaving. Everybody had tears in their eyes. It was good to be on the sled actually and not have people seeing you crying, because it was like just leaving the harbour for the last time on the dogs, and there's Mawson Station in the background, everybody waving, and you're on the last dog ride out of town, never to be repeated ever. That's pretty emotional stuff.
History shows that explorers and scientists came to grips with the mysteries and majesty of Antarctica through the Husky's strong back, sturdy legs, and stalwart spirit.
the 3 pups are flown to the ship after being sedated. Meanwhile, the teams are having a difficult time navigating a path through the fresh snowdrifts.
Well, how are you in favour sort of, I know that's a bit longer, 1.5 kilometres out.
Oh, it's easier running. Yeah, okay.
I can deal with that.
So we just more or less hit June. And then the penguins.
Within sort of 3 or 4 kilometres, we hit very, very soft snow between Mawson and the ship. Very hard going. It meant that Alan and myself were just virtually walking and jogging beside the sled, as the dogs called it.
After struggling nearly 50 kilometres, the 2 dog teams come across the Haglands that are returning from the ship. The drivers warn of broken ice that has to be crossed. It's getting very late, so an alternative plan is made.
Hello, Starlights, this is the ground party. Martin here. Just had a look at the situation here with the Saturgi. It's pretty rough. Therefore, we're going to fly the dogs to the ship just at the last 10k. So could you alert everyone on the ship there that we have dogs with you in a few minutes?
Yeah, Roger, Martin, okay.
Well, that was probably the saddest part of it all, because it happened so quick. Martin said, right, okay, well, let's take him in helicopter. So we just put the back seat up, grabbed Gilhor and Oscar, the first 2 dogs we grabbed from the front of our team, just walked straight up, jumped in the helicopter. Then, I suppose, 30 seconds the helicopter was lifting off and flying towards the ship. Well, it's all over, and this is the dogs leaving Antarctica, and I just had absolute tears in my eyes.
It's just really difficult to tell people what a dog's life is like here. I can't tell you what it's going to be like in Minnesota. I believe that it's going to be a lot better. Not such a severe climate, but just have to wait and see.
The last husky left Mawson just the other day. Ain't no furry friends left since they went away. I've got them last husky blues howling the night away. I better learn to drive skidoos, 'cause I've got them last husky blues. Oh. Well, the pelicans have been eaten, the blizz lines are down too. Last dogs on the Aurora, and here is gone, it's true. Oh, I've got them last husky blues howling the night away. Oh, I better learn to drive skidoos, 'cause I've got them last husky blues. Last husky, husky blues. Last husky, husky blues. Last husky, husky blues. Last husky, husky blues. Good girl. Well, the ship is on the high sea, Antarctica behind. The dogs are on the back deck, Minnesota's on my mind. I've got them last husky blues howling the night away. They tell me it's all good news, but I got those last husky blues. blues. Last husky, husky blues. Last husky, husky blues. Husky blues, husky blues, husky blues. Oh, yeah.
After several weeks on the ship in close quarters, tensions build, and Bundy and Coco, the two bitches, seek a resolution. Since Lobo was given a kennel, he's preferred to look down from on top, rather than be confined inside.
The ship travel did prove to be quite good. They all put on weight. They enjoyed it. There was plenty of affection and company for them.
19.5 kilos. He said, yeah, all three pups have put it on, especially Cobber. He's up 24.5 now. He's really big. Hey.
Huskies have traditionally travelled well by ship. The journey ahead by plane and road may not be so easy. After 3 weeks at sea, they arrive in Hobart. The Huskies have to pass through Australia's strict quarantine. America, however, is not as free of disease. When some Huskies from the New Zealand base previously travelled to America, they picked up a serious infection and took several months to recover.
The thing that actually really sort of worries me is, of course, they get back into this outside world. They've had their immune system so low, never had to fight any viruses or germs or anything like this, and then they, of course, get back into Australia and America, and you know, hope that somehow that, you know, just don't pick up the virus and just, you know, drop dead.
Oh, Coco. That's Frosty.
Some of the previous Huskies that travelled to America managed to break out of their cages in the hold of the plane. One of them was killed in a fight.
No worries.
Okay, Bear, you'll be right, buddy. Come on.
Bear and the others were sealed up for quarantine, not to be let out until they reached Los Angeles. To get to Los Angeles, the dogs are loaded into the hold of a jumbo jet. A strike by ground staff left the Huskies sweltering in the hold of the plane for 3 hours. Dave was very concerned.
I managed to just sort of talk to them all, oh, yeah, good boy, Sprocket, and you know, everything all right, Plato, and he sort of run around a little bit, and you know, reassured them that that was it, and you know, they're a little bit dumbfounded. They didn't know quite what was going. Well, when we got off at Los Angeles, we were first off the plane, which was good, and one of the ground staff there at Los Angeles took us straight down to the tarmac area. Okay, they've got plenty of water. Hey, yes, mate. Hey, good boy. Yeah, very good, very happy. Next thing is, you know, to get us through customs, and then we got there and found we couldn't get to the dogs until the bloody paperwork had been done.
get out of here.
Good. Okay.
Let me have the old copy.
Oh,
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks very much.
Hand that slip to the guy in the warehouse, and you get your dogs.
See you later.
Cheers. Take care. Good luck.
Good. Yep. We'll do 4 dogs at a time. We'll take them out, run them round so they can urinate and have a good drink of water. Then we'll let them get a little bit of exercise, and then we'll put them in, then we'll do another 4.
Yes, love.
I was a bit upset at the transport containers that the dogs were expected to travel in, and I thought, heavens above, you know, we've got 2.5 days of this, and you know, I was sort of very apprehensive right from the word go.
Wilmerson's far away now as we head out of LA. Been on the road too long and I need a place to stay. I got them caged up blue. Don't think much of the views. They tell me we've been making news, but I got them caged up blue. Well, I feel the wheels are turning, our road train is on its way to northern Minnesota, and it's there I'm gonna stay. I got them caged up blues. I don't think much of the views. They tell me we've been making news, and I got them caged up blues. A last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky. Las Vegas to Utah, getting trees for me to mark. Wyoming to Nebraska, gotta get there before dark. I got them caged up blues. How across the well, they tell me it's all good news, but I got them caged up blues. Last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky blues. A last husky, husky blues. Husky blues, husky blues.
On reaching Ely, the first stop is the Minnesota Outward Bound School, where 17 dogs are left. Coco's team continues on to Paul Shirky's Wintergreen Lodge on the other side of the lake. Since leaving Mawson, the 22 Australian Huskies have been on the road for 4 weeks. They've travelled 20,000 kilometres to the other side of the world.
Welcome there, gentlemen.
Cool.
Yeah, Paul Shirky.
Dave Pottage, pleased to meet you, mate.
Dave, nice to meet you.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, great
Nice
to have
to
you
meet you,
here.
Paul.
Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome. I bet you're feeling pretty fried.
That's all
Yeah.
right, mate. It's been a long trip.
Dogs look good?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are looking good. Let's get them out of here.
All right, I'm anxious to meet them.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul.
Bill.
Yeah.
All right. What we got here? Oh, well,
You ready?
The grand entry to Wintergreen. God, they can't even get out that Coco. Oh, hi, Coco. Here.
The bitch, the mother of the pups.
Yeah. Coco, welcome.
There's the other female, just a Jeddah.
They packed little dog. Be lathering friends here. 40 of them down there waiting to see you.
They're all in good condition.
Hi there, Oscar. Beautiful color.
They're blue one, okay? This is Merlin.
They actually arrived in excellent condition.
The side of that guy.
Dave and I had more wear and tear and bumps than the dogs.
Hey, look. They got power to burn in them.
Come on. Hey, settle down.
I've got... Always this friendly, Dave?
Yeah. Hey. Are they happy to be here? Oh, I reckon they're absolutely thrilled. They love the snow, and they love to romp around.
No, seriously, you can put him without chain, and I'll get his nameplate up here for him. Merlin!
Hey?
You a magician, Merlin?
Come on, Zipper, mush it up. Good boys. Good boys, mush. Good boys, mush it up. Come on. Good boys. Within 5 or 6 hours, we took a team out to run down the road and just to let them experience the snow, and they just absolutely fitted in well, almost as if they'd been here all their lives. Oh, they like a tree, all right. Especially through the trails, and Zipper's probably the worst. He's one of the lead dogs, and old Zipper will go to that tree on the left and then to the next tree on the right, pissing on them, just setting his territory, and as if they've had trees all their life, really. I'll feed Heidi.
At both lodges here in Minnesota, the dogs get to live out of the wind for the first time. There are plenty of staff to give them affection. The 17 Mawson Huskies at Outward Bound share the yard with 30 other dogs. They will work together as teams, taking groups on winter camping expeditions. Continuing the habit that he learnt on the ship, Lobo still prefers to sit on top of his kennel. Instead of penguins, he salivates over the local deer.
But what I'm trying to get at, basically they're the same sort of dogs, you know. Once you walk over to them, they'll jump up at you, and that's probably a bad habit that they've got, because they're very excited to see you. A few of the commands are a bit different, but here again, over the next year or so, I suppose they'll come into your side of things. But basically,
Dave will spend the next few months passing on his knowledge of the Mawson teams to the Outward Bound instructors.
And then you want us to go, we say, ready, boys. Now, initially that was meant that they'd rise. And then you'd say, mush, boys, and then off they'd go. But it's turned into ready, boys, and bang, it's all in one thing. Get whiplash at the back of your neck, sort of, because they're so eager to go. So it's sort of ready, boys, and off down the road they go. And to stop, it's just a whoa, 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 boys, sit. Good boys, mush it up. Good boys.
While Dave may be an expert with the teams in Antarctica, he still has something to learn about running dogs in Minnesota. After 2 weeks, the Huskies seem to be settling in at both camps without any sickness. In fact, Dave and Al are surprised at how well they're thriving.
On a couple of the trips that I've been on, our dogs have led the way, and the Outward Bound dogs have followed, and we've often been, a kilometre ahead after, say, 3 or 4 kilometres, and then had to stop and wait till they caught up.
They're clearly the strongest rate dogs I've ever encountered, and quite likely the strongest ones that have ever set foot in the United States. So, for whatever that's worth, we feel very honored to have them here. And at this point, we're fairly certain that the Mawson Huskies here at Wintergreen Lodge will be among the dogs that will be used on our expedition to the North Pole come next May. Clearly, they have what it takes to do the job.
have settled in very well here too. The other day we had them on the road just to run up. The three of them were in a little harness and just pulling a little toy sled along. And that was good to see. It's absolutely superb. I mean, the beautiful sounds and lakes and the trees, and this is like the sea ice down south, but then we go up into the trails and camp, and absolutely a marvellous experience here.
They bunch up together close to the main trace, and with the toboggan sleds, I'm just amazed at how they handle the conditions, sleeping over logs.
Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff, running dogs through the trails, and considering these dogs have never seen trees or trails before, they're just handling it so well. Beautiful.
Come on.
Some people have claimed that if the dogs had to go, why not let them die out in Antarctica? Well, I totally disagree with that. Why let them die out and make them ghosts when here the breed actually does live on? And it's not really an ending, it's just a continuation of the story.
3 months later, reassured that their dogs were in good hands, Al and Dave returned to Australia. On the 16th of May, 6 months after leaving Antarctica, Coco, Jeddah, Merlin, Oscar and Guhor reached the North Pole with Paul Shirky and his team. They have earned a place for themselves in many future Arctic adventures.